Are you trying to get Tyler back with your clumsy excuses? If you really want to be with him that much, I don't mind if you come. I'll hire you and work you hard, so if you're okay with being a slave, I'll give you the new address. How much is this woman misunderstanding and getting carried away by herself? There is no point in arguing anymore, so I might as well hint at the truth soon. Then it's okay to divorce your unemployed husband. I'm busy with work, so you take care of him. You don't even know what happened to Tyler's company, you ignorant fool. Still putting on a brave front, you loser. Rachel is still misunderstanding, but she will eventually realize the wrong choice she has made. Anyway, I decided to divorce Tyler, who kept his unemployment a secret from me and even cheated. However, it looks disadvantageous for me to fight with Tyler and the others alone. So, I decided to ask for help from someone I can rely on, and I made a phone call. My name is Denise Baker, a 43-year-old housewife. Before I got married, I worked for 15 years as a sales clerk in a men's clothing store. The vice president of the wholesale company that did business with the store is now my husband, Tyler. Initially, I thought he was a man of few words even when we met at work, but gradually we got to know each other better, and he started inviting me to a cafe. It seems he secretly liked me. Tyler is the same age as me, and his father is the president of the wholesale company. He is supposed to take over his father's company and become the president someday. Then one day, after we had met several times, Tyler said, if it's okay with you, would you consider dating me with marriage in mind? When Tyler asked me that, I felt overjoyed. However, Tyler's father was strongly opposed. I lost my mother when I was young, and the father who raised me had already passed away. Therefore, they said my family background was not suitable. They insisted that someone like me could not become the wife of the next president. But Tyler responded to that argument by saying, "Even you, Dad, divorced Mom, and because of that, she struggled and passed away in her 60s. So, you have no right to criticize my choice of a marriage partner." After that, Tyler's father fell silent and stopped opposing our marriage. I was shocked when I first heard this fact. I see, that's why his surname is different from his father's. Afterward, I learned from Tyler that after his parents divorced, he and his mother supported each other and lived through many hardships. That's why he says he wants to make his spouse happy. Hearing this, I thought, this man will cherish me for the rest of my life. So, I decided to follow him. Then, at the age of 37, I got married. I dreamed of a sweet married life with Tyler and felt happier than anyone else. But reality did not go so smoothly. At Tyler's request, I quit my job to focus on the household after we got married. I woke up early in the morning and prepared balanced meals. After sending Tyler off, I did all the housework perfectly, from laundry to cleaning. I thought that if I worked hard, he would surely be pleased. While thinking this, I spent fulfilling days. However, although Tyler was kind and cheerful at the beginning of our marriage, his words became fewer as 1 year. 2 years passed. By the 3rd year, he started to act as if it was natural for a wife to do the housework and began to order me around as if he was pointing with his chin. "Hey, get the newspaper, hey! There's still dust on top of the dresser. Are you cleaning properly?" That was just the beginning. He asked me to rearrange the room, and normally, such heavy furniture that requires a man's help was all left to me to move. For your information, I am 5 feet tall and not particularly strong. Tyler, who is over 7 inches taller and has a solid build, just thinks about the layout of the room. I couldn't stand it anymore and finally complained. "Hey! Don't make a small woman like me carry such heavy things. Isn't it a man's job to do the heavy lifting?" But no matter what I say, Tyler just pouts and retorts. "What are you talking about? I'm the next president. It's ridiculous to make me do such heavy labor. Carrying heavy things is your duty as the caretaker." So, he calls me a caretaker. More like I'm being treated like a slave. Why has Tyler become such a husband in our 3rd year of marriage? I wondered. Could it be that he's frustrated because we haven't had children yet? I myself dream of a life with children. With that thought, I went to the gynecologist for a checkup. Ideally, I would like Tyler to cooperate, but I'm not in a position to speak out now. For now, it turns out there is nothing particularly wrong with me, so I have been actively trying to conceive. But no matter how long it goes on, there are no signs of pregnancy. I thought it might be a good idea to discuss this with Tyler, so I bravely brought up the topic of trying to conceive. However, the words that came back from Tyler were unbelievable. Huh? Trying to conceive? You still intend to have children at your age? What? It's not uncommon these days for women over 40 to have children. Tyler laughed out loud in response to my reply. I've never heard such a thing. Just look around. The mothers with small children are mostly in their late 20s or mid-30s. Hey, where did you get that information? It's not just a scene from a drama, is it? Indeed, Tyler has no children and no small children in his relatives. Therefore, he wouldn't have information about mothers with small children today. If he has seen any, it's merely because the mothers he happened to notice were young. Tyler talks as if this limited information from 2 or 3 people were common knowledge. Why is he so resistant to the topic of trying to conceive? Concerned, I asked him again. Well, aside from that, don't you want children, Tyler? Huh? Children. I'm not really interested. I was speechless at his words. Married, yet he doesn't want children. I couldn't believe Tyler's attitude and asked him again. Why? Shouldn't we have children if we're married? Look, even your father would be happy if he had a successor. I said this, respecting Tyler's position, but his reaction was lukewarm. Tyler was silent for a while, but then slowly spoke. A successor. I actually never wanted to take over my father's company after he and my mother split up. I only got married because I was worried about what others would think. I didn't want to be seen as unsuitable for marriage because I am a son of divorced parents. What? So, you're saying you married me just to maintain appearances because you care about what others think? That's terrible. Knowing his true feelings, I was devastated. Then, Tyler suddenly raised his voice. Shut up. What do you know? He yelled at me as if he was taking his frustration out on me and then left the room. What does he expect me to understand in this situation? Since then, Tyler, perhaps upset, has started buying his own food and has stopped giving me any money for living expenses. I didn't know what to do, so I sought advice from my dependable aunt. This aunt, my mother's sister, has cherished me since I was little. My aunt, focused on her career, is still working vigorously at 68 without ever having married. When I discussed my troubles with her, she listened sympathetically. Oh my, that's tough. If Tyler doesn't want children, why don't you try working, Denise? It's better than staying at home, it'll take your mind off things. Perhaps my aunt was right. I decided to take this opportunity to work at the clothing manufacturer company that my aunt runs. When I told Tyler, he responded with an indifferent expression. At any rate, a company run by a 60-plus-year-old aunt is probably small, and you'll just be a part-time worker there. Well, if it's just enough to earn your keep, that's probably just right. Tyler's dismissive reaction even towards my successful aunt upset me a bit, but I didn't say anything in response. After all, I should just follow my aunt's example and focus on my work from now on. One day, after I had started working for a while, I was looking at the news on my smartphone during a break and came across some shocking information. It turns out, Tyler's company had gone bankrupt. I thought about asking Tyler when I got home, but since I started working, he has stopped talking to me altogether, so there was no opportunity to bring it up. Tyler hadn't mentioned anything about his company either. It seems there's nothing I can do but let it be. Since he wasn't contributing to the living expenses anyway, it doesn't really affect me. Tyler hasn't said anything about his company, but he has started eating the meals I prepare at home. He must be struggling with food expenses now that he has no income. This situation continued for about 2 or 3 years when one day, I received a call on my smartphone. Looking at the screen, I saw a number I didn't recognize. Thinking it might be someone from work, I answered the call. "Ah, Denise, it's been a while. Do you know who this is?" Suddenly, I heard a cheerful woman's voice, and after thinking about it, it sounded somewhat familiar. Could it be Rachel? Bingo! You got it. How have you been, Denise? You haven't changed your mobile number since before you got married? I'm glad I could reach you. The caller was Rachel, my best friend since high school. In high school, she was very serious, but after I went to university and Rachel went to community college, she somehow became more sophisticated earlier than me. Rachel's lifestyle became flashy, and she gradually drifted away from me. However, we remained friends who occasionally kept in touch until I got married. The sudden contact made me feel uneasy. It's been a while. You seem well, Rachel. What's up today? Then, as if trying to gauge the situation, Rachel asked. Actually, I'll be near your house for work in the next 2 or 3 days. I was wondering if I could stop by your place. I hesitated for a moment. Now that Tyler's company had gone bankrupt, I wasn't sure if he would be home. Just then, Tyler happened to pass by in the background. Looking back, Tyler started to speak. Is a guest coming? I don't mind. Rachel seemed to hear his voice over the phone and suddenly got excited. Is that your husband? The one who's supposed to be the next president. It's okay for me to visit then? I'm looking forward to it. I've always been curious about what the home of a future president and his wife would be like. It was hard to refuse when she was so enthusiastic. I got swept up in Rachel's pace and agreed for her to visit our home the day after tomorrow in the afternoon. On the day of the visit, Rachel arrived at our house with a very curious look. Surprisingly, Tyler, who I thought would be out, was also home. Moreover, although he was usually unsmiling with just the two of us, today he greeted her with a smile at the entrance. Hello, you're Rachel, right? I've met you once before you got married. You brought a gift because you couldn't attend the wedding. Oh my, Tyler. You remember me? I'm so pleased. The two of them suddenly started chatting amiably, making me feel left out. However, after a little while, Tyler quickly returned to the bedroom. I showed Rachel into the living room and made some coffee. Meanwhile, Rachel, sitting on the living room sofa, looked around the house as if she was scouting it out. You really have a nice home. The furniture must be expensive, right? No, not really. I replied modestly because, in reality, most of the household items here were bought by me. Since Tyler didn't have many possessions to begin with when we got married, I gradually acquired these over the 3 years since I started working. Regardless, Rachel was unconcerned and kept throwing one question after another, mostly about the relationship between my husband and me. Considering the situation, I found it difficult to respond and could only evade the questions vaguely. After about 3 hours of questioning, Rachel said goodbye to Tyler and left our house. It felt like the calm after a storm. However, that night, Tyler suddenly said he was going out and left the house. He hasn't returned even after a week. I thought about it while at work. If he doesn't come back today, maybe I should call him? We had been distant, so I had let it be until now, but I'm really worried. Thinking this, I hurried home after work. Then, I felt that the house was more spacious than usual. Upon closer inspection, many pieces of furniture were gone. I thought maybe a burglar had entered when I received a call from Rachel. Hello? Are you worried because your husband left? Actually, he has been with me this whole week. What? What does that mean? I remembered how Rachel had strangely wanted to know about Tyler and me. Could it be? I asked. You're not living together, are you? That, of course, yes. I had Tyler's used furniture moved to my new place today. What? That furniture is all mine. Please return it. and tell me where you are right now. I was worried about Tyler, but I was more upset that my things were taken without my permission. What are you talking about? You were being supported, so there's no way you could afford all that by yourself, right? Really bluffing. Rachel said mockingly. She seems to know nothing. That it was actually me who was supporting. You don't understand anything. There is nothing of Tyler's among those things. I just want my own things back. Are you trying to get Tyler back with your clumsy excuses? If you really want to be with him that much, I don't mind if you come. I'll hire you and work you hard, so if you're okay with being a slave, I'll give you the new address. How much is this woman misunderstanding and getting carried away by herself? There is no point in arguing anymore, so I might as well hint at the truth soon. Then it's okay to divorce your unemployed husband. I'm busy with work, so you take care of him. You don't even know what happened to Tyler's company, you ignorant fool. Still putting on a brave front, you loser. Rachel seems to still be misunderstanding, but she will eventually realize the wrong choice she has made. I responded with a yeah, and hung up the phone. Anyway, I decided to divorce Tyler, who kept his unemployment a secret from me and even cheated. However, it looks disadvantageous for me to fight with Tyler and the others alone. So, I decided to ask for help from someone I can rely on, and I called my aunt. My aunt, though never married, has overcome numerous troubles with men and resolved other people's romantic disputes. She is really dependable in such times. I explained the situation in detail over the phone. Then, my aunt gave me some precise advice. If it's come to this, you have no choice but to divorce. But first, you need concrete evidence that Tyler cheated. It would be best to hire a detective agency to investigate. If you have a proper investigative report, it will be advantageous in claiming compensation. True to form, my aunt gave great advice. I immediately started taking action as suggested. Even though I said I needed evidence of the affair, I didn't know where they were living, so I hired a detective first. Then, their address was quickly identified. Thanks to the detailed surveillance, dozens of photos proving the affair were taken. Another shocking fact was also discovered. The detective who was tailing Rachel found her meeting not Tyler but other men. And not just one or two, but several wealthy-looking men. Evidence photos of these meetings were also perfectly captured. After all, Rachel was such a serious student back then. I wonder when she became such a woman with bad taste in men. It might have been since she started working. I shared these facts with my aunt. My aunt, who had cherished me since I was little, knew Rachel from our high school days. My aunt also wondered why Rachel had changed so much, puzzling over it. There might have been some trigger that caused this, perhaps getting involved with the wrong people. Prompted by her words, I remembered something. I heard that the company Rachel joined as a new graduate was a real toxic company. Maybe that company has something to do with it. I seem to remember her complaining about her boss too. She quit soon after, so I never heard the company name. My aunt nodded in understanding, showing a look as if she had figured something out from her years of life experience. I think I have a rough idea. Now that we have gathered evidence of her infidelity and misconduct, let's move on to the next plan. Together with my aunt, I stormed into Rachel's new home. Of course, without an appointment. Rachel and Tyler showed a look of surprise when I suddenly appeared. Denise. How did you find this place? Oh. Did you think I would just cry myself to sleep? I've had everything about your current situation investigated. I retorted with a smirk and scattered the photos taken by the detective in front of Rachel. Among them were pictures of Rachel and Tyler arm in arm leaving this house, and others showing them embracing intensely. No, that's not all. There are countless photos of Rachel leaving hotels with several unknown men. Seeing these photos, Tyler grabbed one and turned pale. What is this? Rachel, how many men have you been with? Was it a lie when you said you loved only me? Me. Misunderstanding. This must be some kind of mistake. Denise. Creating fake photos because you're mad at me is cheating. Rachel flustered, trying to attack me in desperation. The numerous photos vividly depict men and women getting along intimately. Does she think someone like me, not a professional, could create such composite photos? These were all taken by a detective I hired. I found out when I had him investigate, but apparently, since you started working, you've been targeting wealthy men for over 20 years. As I said this, Tyler glared at Rachel. Is that true? Don't tell me I'm one of them? I almost burst out laughing at that remark. After all, he's just an unemployed man now. Rachel was silent, unable to say anything, just staring at the ground. Seeing her like this, my aunt spoke up. It's hard to say anything in response to that, isn't it? The trigger for you to start fawning over wealthy men was a surprising person, Tyler. Right? Am I on the mark? Rachel looked shocked and about to say. Why do you know that? When a male voice was heard from the entrance. Is nobody here? Why suddenly call me to this place? The person who appeared was the father-in-law. In fact, I had sent him a message the night before. Tyler is having an affair, and we are going to discuss it. Please come to this place tomorrow. The father-in-law seemed indifferent about Tyler's infidelity. However, I had also told him that it might lead to a discussion of divorce and wanted him to be present. The father-in-law, checking the surroundings, was visibly surprised to see Rachel. Rachel. Why are you here? At the father-in-law's astonishment, Tyler looked puzzled. Dad, do you know Rachel? I don't know her. While he hastily shook his head trying to deny it, my aunt laughed through her nose and asked. Mr. President of Anderson Corporation, 20 years ago you divorced your wife because your relationship with a new female employee became known. Wasn't that woman here, Rachel? The father-in-law turned pale and kept shaking his head. However, Rachel, who had been silent until then, suddenly flashed a cunning smile. Yes. This man is my former boss, who toyed with me and then discarded me. I got fired because of him and struggled to find another job. That's why I wanted to somehow find a wealthy man and be happy. I see. So you were approaching several wealthy men, is that it? But what about Tyler? He is a married man and the husband of your close friend. What was the point of getting close to him? Indeed, that made sense. I had done nothing to earn Rachel's grudge. Then, Rachel responded to my aunt's question. When I heard Denise was getting married, I intended to attend the wedding because we were friends. But when I heard who she was marrying, it was the company that fired me. When I heard that, I wanted to get revenge on the president someday, so I decided to ruin Tyler's life, the heir. So, that's why you didn't come to the wedding. Learning the truth about Rachel left me with mixed feelings. Despite being angry, Rachel was struggling with a dark past. She continued to speak with a somber expression. Yes. And I was also jealous of Denise, who had made a wealthy and happy marriage without considering me. I wanted to destroy Tyler regardless of what happened to you. If a dark rumor spread about the president's heir, the company would be finished. I tried to make Rachel see that she was mistaken. Rachel. You didn't understand anything. You didn't need to do all this for nothing. This father and son were already at rock bottom without your intervention. Hearing this, Rachel, unaware of Tyler and his father's current situation, looked shocked and said, What? Then, looking at Tyler, I said with a look of disbelief. Tyler. You've managed to hide that you're unemployed so far. With no money, how have you been managing to live? Denise. You knew? That our company had gone bankrupt? My aunt and I almost burst out laughing at Tyler's surprise. It was all over the news, how could he not know? The only one who wouldn't know was Rachel, who had no interest in the news. Tyler, having lost his job, had become disconnected from all lifelines like the internet and TV and was unaware that his company was being talked about. Rachel, finally understanding the situation, was stunned. What? So what have I been doing all this time? As if in a daze, she then glared at Tyler. Tyler. Why didn't you tell me the company had gone under? Oh. That's why you were selling off the furniture I brought one after another? What? It turned out that Tyler had been selling off the furniture I had bought with my earnings. Some of that furniture was my favorite. Despite having taken others' belongings without remorse, Tyler brazenly said. I had no choice because I had no money. But I was surprised that Denise had bought such expensive furniture. What kind of job do you do to earn so much? Furious with Tyler, I finally vented about the work I had been doing. Since you stopped contributing to the living expenses, I've been working full-time at Harrington Trading, my aunt's company. I've been entrusted with responsible work and receive a proper salary. So, even without your financial support, I've had no trouble at all. Tyler was shocked to hear the name of the company my aunt managed. Harrington Trading? Isn't that one of the largest apparel manufacturers in this region? Harrington Trading was a company founded by my maternal grandfather. Since my mother, the eldest daughter, had married out, my aunt, the second daughter, had taken over. Harrington is my maternal surname, so it seemed he hadn't realized that it was my family's company. That's right. Someone called me a loser, but... I then shifted my gaze to Rachel and said more sternly. I became the executive director at Harrington Trading, considering my years of experience working in an apparel store, earning $3,000 a month. So for the past few years, I have been the one supporting our household finances. Rachel and Tyler remained silent, unable to respond. Then, the father-in-law looked at the aunt, seeming to want to say something. Speaking of Harrington Trading, there used to be business dealings with our company too. My father was well acquainted with the previous president. Yes. And 20 years ago, when you had just become the president, due to your womanizing issues, the previous president decided to cease all business with your company. It is certain that the loss of business with Harrington Trading was a factor in the downfall of the father-in-law's company, which had already been starting to falter at the time. Perhaps that's why the aunt had an inkling when she heard Rachel's story. The aunt had considered hiring the woman who was fired because of the president but decided against it after hearing of her repeated misconduct. Harrington Trading prioritizes the trust of its customers, so it was judged that someone who could cause problems was not suitable for the company. The father-in-law, looking somewhat apologetic, said to the aunt, I had no idea you were the successor of Harrington Trading. I am truly sorry for the trouble I caused back then. No. I knew that President Anderson would be coming to Denise's wedding, so I attended just as an aunt and kept the company's involvement hidden. Denise has a different last name, and I thought it wouldn't be noticed. Fortunately, you hardly remembered my face. The aunt turned her eyes away after saying this. There were no more business dealings, and she probably sensed that even familial relations would cease. Seeing the aunt's demeanor, the father-in-law did not try to continue the conversation. Now, it was my turn. While I felt a bit of sympathy for Rachel, who unwittingly stole Tyler and worried over nothing, I could not forgive her. Regardless of the circumstances, she had an affair with my husband and took our belongings without permission. Rachel. Regardless of the circumstances, I will be suing you and Tyler for damages for the affair. And you will also compensate for the household items. Rachel grimaced as if she had bitten into a bitter bug. I was deceived by Tyler too. Plus, it was Tyler who took the household items and sold them. So, it has nothing to do with me. In fact, I would like compensation from Tyler for deceiving me. What? I didn't mean to deceive anyone. I just found it hard to say that the company had gone under. Besides, you were the one using me to get back at my father. If anything, I was the one who was deceived. The two of them argued back and forth, each trying to blame the other. Seeing that the situation was getting out of hand, the aunt stepped between them. All right, that's enough of this ugly quarreling. Regardless of the reasons, what Rachel did clearly constitutes love theft. You both owe Denise compensation. And Tyler, since you took things without permission, you need to reimburse her for those items as well. It was like a mother settling a squabble between children. I was just getting steamrolled by their force, so I was truly grateful that my aunt was there. The two of them, now resigned, hung their heads as if about to cry. Damn. With such a strong ally as Denise, I can't compete. How am I supposed to pay when I'm unemployed? I don't have any money either. Though they lamented, it looked like we could finally settle things. I decided that Rachel and Tyler would pay the damages, and Tyler would reimburse me for the household items. Following that, my divorce from Tyler was finalized. We sold the house we lived in, and the proceeds were divided. For the time being, I would be staying with my aunt. Thank you, Aunt. I might not have been able to resolve this on my own. You've always been a reliable support since I was young. Oh, don't make me out to be some kind of superhero. I'm just a frail woman, after all. We laughed together, looking at each other. Finally, peaceful days had returned. As for Tyler post-divorce, he ended up living with his father. Even though he's his father, he seemed to be merely relying on him, claiming it was important to care for him. However, Tyler said he would support his father and tried to start a business. Unfortunately, things in life don't always go smoothly. His business failed, and they ended up in debt. This news was all over our company, and I heard about it. In fact, many former employees of his father's company now work at our company. That's how I got the updates on Tyler and his father's situation. As for Rachel, since she never held a steady job, she couldn't afford the rent for the apartment she intended to live in with Tyler and had to move back to her parents' house. However, her parents, who run a farm, scolded her for her years of frivolous behavior. They forced her to help with farm work, which she had always disliked. Under the watchful eyes of her parents, she couldn't escape. Moreover, her parents, aware of her poor history with men, forbade her from dating. They planned to arrange a marriage for her with someone who would take over the farm. I heard about Rachel's situation from my aunt. Her parents, well known in the area, had asked my aunt to find a suitable match for Rachel. My aunt, to spare her parents any further grief, kept it a secret that Rachel had tried to steal Tyler from me. Recently, my aunt decided to retire from her position as president and nominated me as her successor. She will step back from the daily operations but will continue to watch over me as the chairwoman. As I take over the company, I plan to further develop it. Despite my busy days and lack of a romantic life, I'm putting my energy into developing new lines of children's clothing. By interacting with our customers and their families, I aim to provide products that keep the children and their parents smiling. This is how I bridge my dreams through my work.
We're getting a divorce. Your body is of no use to me anymore.
My husband suddenly brought up a divorce, looking down on me for not being able to have children. He never thinks of blaming himself, always placing all the responsibilities on me. Moreover, it seems he's been bringing women to our house and having fun. I wonder why I married such a man like him. I understand. Let's just divorce then. To break away from the painful past, I embarked on a journey to Mexico. I'm determined to become happy, make him regret for sure. My name is Samantha, and I am 31 years old. I am a housewife in the first year of marriage. Although I'm a housewife, my hobby of handcrafting has led me to sell accessories. It's an online shop, so the earrings aren't much, but being able to do something I enjoy isn't bad. My husband is 38 years old, 7 years my senior. We met at a wedding party 3 years ago and managed to make it this long. My husband is handsome, but not pretentious, and his smile is wonderful, making him liked by everyone. He chose me. I couldn't contain my excitement and was head over heels for him. I was looking forward to building an ideal family with him, overflowing with dreams and hopes at the beginning of our marriage. Yet, in just the first year, misfortune began to overshadow our marital life. We have been eager to have children from the time we were dating, and after getting married, we tried hard, including checking basal body temperature and having my husband take supplements. But Reality was not so simple. It seems this month is a no-go too. I become nervous every month when the time comes to check for signs. In the first 3 months, he would kindly say,
"All right, let's not get too down about this. It'll come to us eventually, right?"
But recently, he has grown tired of my anxious demeanor and no longer asks about my period like he used to at the beginning of our marriage. I was already ready to welcome a child, but now we hardly engage in activities that could lead to pregnancy. What's more, he started to throw thoughtless comments like,
"Isn't this your fault?"
It's not necessarily my fault. Though I think so, I haven't actually checked, so I can't deny it completely, and with a mindset of action over worry, I decided to undergo fertility treatments. I went to the hospital on weekdays, and on Sundays I participated in my favorite handcraft sales. Doing what I love allows me to escape from reality's frustrations. Not long after starting fertility treatments, my doctor said,
"Your husband needs to be tested too."
When I asked him, his response was unexpected.
"What? Me? No way. Solve it by yourself."
We won't know which one of us has the issue unless we both get checked.
"I've told you I'm fine."
My husband stubbornly refused to get tested. It was a mystery why he was so confident. This exchange continued and our marital life became filled with cold days. My irritation grew more than my confusion and I decided to go shopping to clear my mind. Huh? My credit card is missing. Where did I put it? I rarely use it, so it should have been stored in a drawer. As I searched every corner of the room, something shiny caught my eye near the bed. What's this? Picking it up, it was a pair of women's earrings that weren't mine. A present for me? That can't be right. Or has someone else been here? My husband's cheating on me? My mind was swirling with wild thoughts and I felt nauseous. Despite wanting to believe otherwise, my husband's recent behavior had been suspicious and I couldn't fully trust him. Even the card, I thought. Maybe something was amiss. Once I started worrying, there seemed to be no end, so I decided to check the credit card statements. I thought it would clear things up, but instead my suspicions towards my husband only grew. What's this? A hotel stay for $360? And at a woman's brand shop? $1,000? Huh? I gasped at the unexpected high expenses that I didn't recognize. This meant someone was using my card to buy things for someone else. Unbelievable. Looking back, I realized these unknown purchases started 6 months ago, with the most recent statement showing a charge of about $7,000 at a travel agency. Travel? Absolutely unforgivable. Recalling my husband's recent distant behavior, I was enraged, and I firmly decided to get a divorce. That evening, when my husband came home, he started the conversation before I could even speak.
"I'll be going on a trip this weekend. I'll be back in a week."
What? I couldn't believe my ears, but this was my chance to confront him. Who are you traveling with, and where?
Huh?
He seemed surprised by the question, visibly annoyed. So, who and where? A week is a long time, isn't it?
Oh, it's overseas.
Overseas? I was genuinely shocked.
So I'll be back in a week. I'll get you a souvenir or something.
I don't care about souvenirs. Who are you going with?
Some friends from back home. Someone you don't know.
Oh, really? My response, laced with skepticism, seemed to provoke him. Are they really just friends?
Yes. Are you doubting me?
He frowned as if the suggestion was absurd. By the way, I can't find my credit card. Do you know where it is?
Your card? No idea.
His eyes darted away at the mention of the card. I see, I'll have to stop the card then.
Stop it?
Yes, it would be terrible if it was used without permission.
Wait. Maybe I borrowed it and forgot to return it.
Really? His attempt at an apology was painfully inadequate.
Here, this must be it. Sorry for borrowing yours without asking you. I couldn't find my card and needed to use one urgently. But then I found mine right before using yours, so I didn't actually use it.
The more he lied, the more he talked. It's true what they say. Is that so? Well, I didn't want him to think he could fool me with such an act. I decided to confront him with the credit card statements. I have a question then.
What about it?
about these credit card statements. There are charges for hotels, brand wallets, and even travel payments. You didn't use this card, did you? He was at a loss for words. If you say it wasn't you, I'll call the credit card company right now to check, and I'll have to block this card too.
Oh, wait a minute. I remember now, it was me. I used it. I forgot.
You forgot?
Yeah. No, the hotel was when I went drinking with a colleague from work, and we couldn't get home because of a sudden rain. I, being drunk and generous, paid for the hotel.
Really? His excuses were becoming impressively ridiculous.
No, really. The charge at the woman's brand shop was for a wallet I bought, intending to give you as a present. But I lost it. Sorry.
Now that's strange. Why would you buy a present for me with a card that's in my name?
Well, I couldn't find my card at the time, but I intended to pay you back later.
I was at my breaking point with his outrageous lies. Enough. You're cheating, aren't you?
What?
Then what about this earring? Why would there be a woman's earring other than mine in our bedroom?
Well...
Finally conceding, he sighed deeply and braced himself with a look of utter annoyance.
Yeah, so what? What a hassle.
Why does the person who cheated act so defiant and high and mighty? I was astounded. Excuse me? What's with that attitude? You're the one who cheated.
So what? If you didn't want to be cheated on, you should have tried harder.
I was speechless at his absurd logic. Tried harder? How? Why is it my fault that I was cheated on? Are you out of your mind?
Can't you see? If you were cheated on, it's because you weren't attractive enough. If you didn't want to be cheated on, you should have made more of an effort.
It was useless. We were getting nowhere. Absolutely unbelievable. I couldn't believe my husband was this foolish. And then he finally declared,
Enough. We're getting a divorce. You're useless to me now.
Divorce? Useless? I couldn't comprehend how he arrived to such a conclusion. I stared at him, seething with anger. Excuse me? Do you even understand what you're saying?
I understand perfectly. I'm saying we're getting a divorce. I don't need a woman who can't have children.
His cruelty was beyond belief. It was hard to imagine someone could be this cruel. At that moment, any feelings I had for my husband disappeared and I accepted the divorce. Fine, let's get a divorce.
Good. That makes things easier. Make sure you're gone by the time I get back from my trip.
I would have left, even if you hadn't said anything. His unreasonable words pierced my heart, and I couldn't stop crying that day. Then the weekend arrived. Without any ounce of regret, my husband left for his trip as if he couldn't be happier. Moreover, he left the divorce papers on the table, filled out on his part. After being treated like this, I felt nothing but hatred for him. All I have to do is sign, and it will all be over. I submitted the divorce papers officially ending our brief marriage. A year later, it feels nostalgic, even though it's only been a short while. Having returned from Mexico, I took a deep breath. The smell of my hometown and the crowds felt comforting, different from abroad. Now I have to go home and have a lot of things to do, like unpacking and cleaning. As I was busying myself at home, I heard a familiar male voice.
Hey, I finally found you.
Turning around, there stood my ex-husband. I hadn't seen him since he left me to go on an overseas trip. Oh, what do you want? I'm busy, you know.
Don't play dumb. You've messed everything up because of your unnecessary meddling.
Indeed, after our divorce, I had hired a detective agency to investigate his affairs and, based on the evidence, asked a lawyer to demand compensation. It seems he had received the documents. I have every right to claim for it. I haven't done anything wrong, have I?
Shut up. Because of you, I've had trouble with my parents, and a rumor even spread around at work. I lost my job. It's all your fault.
He was ranting without any concern for the surroundings, clearly distressed. My fault? Everything is your fault. You're the one who left me, remember? Saying you didn't need a woman who couldn't bear children. I'll never forget it. The anger from that day remains still vivid in my memory. But I'm no longer the person who gets swayed by the bitter past with my ex-husband. I have a new partner in life by my side now.
Is something wrong, Samantha?
Ah, Carlos. Standing close by my side was my current husband, Carlos, who's from Mexico. He was the one who genuinely helped me when I was heartbroken, went to Mexico barely speaking Spanish. I taught him English and about American culture because he liked America, and he taught me Spanish since I struggled with it. Our relationship gradually developed from there. Carlos had a dream of living in America someday, and to fulfill that dream, we came back together. My ex-husband shouldn't know my address after the divorce, so he must have asked my parents where I was, and that's how he came here.
Who's this guy?
My husband.
What?
His eyes widened in surprise. I remarried. His gaze then shifted to the baby cradled in Carlos's arms.
That child is...
Yes, my child.
What? How? How could you have a child?
That's right. He seemed to still believe I was infertile, standing agape and frozen.
How? Weren't you unable to have children?
That's what you thought on your own, didn't you? I had a checkup at the hospital and there was no problem with me, but what about you, I wonder?
What do you mean?
You refused to get tested, remember? It means that the problem was with you. No children with your affair partner yet, right?
That's...
He fell completely silent. You need to get tested. The cause of infertility is equally likely to be from the male as it is from the female, right, Carlos? While holding our baby and watching the exchange between me and my ex-husband, Carlos pulled me close and glared at my ex.
I've been listening to your story. Samantha is my wife now. If you hurt her, I won't forgive you.
Carlos is an obstetrician. Through his referral, I underwent through fertility tests and was found to have no issues. This is proven by the baby Carlos is now holding in his arms. And he is set to work as a doctor at the New York hospital, having obtained his medical license in America upon our return.
What the hell?
My ex-husband still seemed to want to say something.
If I had known you could have children, I would never have divorced you. It's not too late. Let's get married again.
What? Carlos and I were speechless at his self-centered words. I never want to see you again, and there's no way I'd ever consider getting back together.
Why? You were madly in love with me and wanted to marry me. We can still make it work.
What? His words made no sense. It was as if his language had changed completely, and we couldn't communicate at all. How could I have ever married such a person like him? I was filled with regret. I have moved on to a new life. I will never see you again.
Ugh.
I looked at my ex-husband with a strong gaze. Goodbye. Now, leave my side. Carlos stood in front of him and shouted,
Leave now or I'll call the police.
I turned around and walked away with Carlos. The next day, I visited my parents' house for the first time in a while and reintroduced them to my new family. My parents were overjoyed with their first grandson, and Carlos, who could now speak English, made them very happy. My sister had inadvertently told my ex-husband where I lived, not knowing the full story. She apologized for what had happened, but in the end, I was glad I could tell him off directly. According to the detective agency, my ex-husband had been involved with multiple women even before our marriage and continued his affairs under. After quitting his job and running out of money, he was being sued for compensation by the women he had deceived, desperately seeking to reconcile with me, likely seeing me as a financial opportunity. He was truly despicable. And there was good news for our family. Actually, I'm pregnant with our second child. My parents and sister were thrilled with this news. We don't know if the baby's a boy or a girl yet, but after struggling with infertility, I am now in the happiest phase of my life. Thinking about the many forms of happiness still to come fills me with excitement. Carlos and I smiled at each other as we watched our son embracing each other and savoring this happy time. Ugh, what is this smell? On days when I come home late and take a bath, it's always like this. There's a greenish, really unpleasant smell drifting through the bathroom. The likely source of the smell is probably my husband. I honestly didn't want to think about what he might be doing in the bathroom. I can still bear it, but I wonder how our high school-aged daughter feels about it. That reminds me, I just passed by her a moment ago. That child seemed to have a bigger stomach. At that moment, I was struck by a terrible chill. My daughter's stomach is getting bigger? Why? Since when? I haven't heard about her having a boyfriend. She would tell me if she had one. Could it be that she is carrying a burden she can't talk about to anyone? Suffering alone with her belly growing bigger? If that's the case, then her unhappy face, her stooped posture, and the size of her belly all make sense. The one who made my daughter's stomach grow. My mind started spinning with the worst imaginations. My name is Fiona. I'm 44 years old. I work as a department head in the sales department of a specialty trading company related to food products. I manage several team members and work late every day. These past few years, I've been greatly troubled by my husband, Ben. He's so lazy and sloppy, and it irritates me, who is meticulous. Back when we married 18 years ago, through an introduction from an acquaintance, he wasn't like this. The passage of time is a cruel thing. I can't help but deeply feel this. My husband, who works at a staffing agency, always comes home before me, but does nothing around the house. Instead, he rushes our daughter Ruby, making her cook and take baths. Whenever I come home from work and encounter such scenes, I make it a point to speak sternly to him. Hey, you! Ruby needs to do her high school assignments, right? Please, take care of the housework yourself. How many times do I have to tell you? You can cook, can't you?
Shut up. Housework is a woman's job, right? I'm tired from work.
Again with that? Everyone is tired, right? About 3 years ago, my husband quit the security company he had been working for. He didn't consult me at all when he quit the job. Apparently, he didn't get along with his boss. After that, he started working at the staffing agency he was introduced to by an acquaintance.
Serves them right. My take-home pay is higher than when I was working security. Quitting was the right move.
I remember he was unabashedly happy about that. But it seems that the job at the staffing agency was not an easy one. There was a quota to increase the number of registrants, and it was quite difficult to achieve. In addition to acquiring new users, there were many other tasks to be done. He was simply busy. My husband, who was a mid-career hire, couldn't keep up with the busyness, and it seemed that his colleagues were significantly outpacing him. Moreover, unfortunately, many of the employees at his new workplace had immature personalities. My husband, who jumped into such a place, became an easy target. He was constantly teased by everyone. Ordered around by younger seniors and ridiculed as useless behind his back, he lived through such excruciating days.
Those terrible jerks. Just watch. All they do is childish harassment.
My husband became more and more rough day by day. He was always the kind of person who preferred being at home. He began to vent the stress accumulated at work at home.
Hey, the food. What's going on? I told you to have it ready before I get home.
My daughter Ruby, who always bears the brunt of my husband's yelling, is our only child and a very quiet girl from a parent's perspective. That's probably why he finds it easy to scold her. He is always barking at Ruby.
How many times do I have to tell you to do the housework before your homework, huh?
Hey, how many times do I have to tell you not to blame Ruby? Her studies come first. Housework is secondary. I've told you this. Make your own meals.
It's because you coddle her like that she's no good.
My husband can't defy me. Although we work in different places, I earn much more and hold a higher position. I don't mean to be bossy, but I had to protect my daughter. My husband would yell at Ruby, and I would defend her and blame him. This was the routine in our family. At that time, I couldn't even imagine that he would do such things to our daughter. It was about 2 years ago that I noticed a clear change in my husband's behavior. At that time, it seems the stress he faced at work had become considerable. He often had bags under his eyes from lack of sleep, and he muttered to himself a lot.
Those jerks. They're really taking me for a fool. Just you wait. I'll show them.
One day I noticed something shocking on my husband's head. There was a spot above the left temple where a clump of hair had completely fallen out. After I pointed out, he rushed to the bathroom and shouted loudly in frustration.
I've got a bald spot the size of a dime. It's all because of those jerks at the company. Damn it.
Maybe you should go to the hospital and maybe talk to your supervisor.
The supervisor is trash too. What's the point in talking to him?
Eventually, my husband expressed a desire to quit the staffing agency. I stopped him. Before quitting without a plan, I wanted him to find something else first. Sending Ruby to a good university, saving for retirement, and the daily expenses? My income alone isn't enough. I couldn't let him quit his job. Every time I argued this, he scratched his head in frustration.
What do you want me to do then? Should I just keep suffering alone, huh?
Nobody is saying that. Why would you think that? If he's being harassed, he should confront it properly. Nowadays, the company he works for should have a compliance office. It's foolish to just complain without following proper procedures. Even when I said this, my husband, who is meek outside, seemed unable to do anything. He continued to bring home the stress accumulated at work and vented it by shouting. Maybe it was still better when it was just shouting. Gradually, my husband started drinking a lot. He got into gambling on weekends. Unnecessary expenses increased, and the atmosphere at home only worsened. He started going out more often, and our money dwindled rapidly. It must be because I looked anxious. One day, a friend noticed and reached out to me, offering to help with any problems. I needed to keep track of where and what my husband was doing to some extent. Grateful for my close friend's kind offer, I asked her for a favor. Later, this would greatly help my daughter and me, but that's a story for later. On one such weekend night, as I was washing dishes in the kitchen, I heard my husband's shouting from the living room, followed by the sound of breaking glass and Ruby's scream. When I went to check, the room was a disaster. Broken glasses, scattered peanuts, and various other items were all over the place. Amidst this chaos, my husband was yelling something at Ruby, who was crouched and covering her ears. His speech was slurred from the alcohol. I couldn't understand what he was saying. When he tried to step on Ruby's back, I quickly restrained him with a bear hug. What are you doing? It's despicable to try to kick your daughter when you're drunk.
It's her fault. I was enjoying my drink and she brought her study materials to the living room. It ruins the taste of the booze, eh? Are you listening?
For that? I can't believe it. I left my husband and rushed to Ruby. I felt terribly sorry for my daughter, who had been yelled at and almost kicked for such an unreasonable reason. What's the big deal about studying in the living room? If the booze tastes bad, that's my husband's problem. I understand he's stressed, but it's insane to vent it by tormenting our daughter. Never do such a thing to Ruby again. Understand?
Oh, that's right. Then you better give me $500 each month. If you do that, I won't bother Ruby at all. I've been short on money lately, you know?
Using our daughter as a hostage to blackmail your wife? Stop saying such stupid things. How low can a person fall before they're satisfied? Day by day, my husband seemed to become a more sloppy and pitiful person. His drinking increased, his spending became more reckless, and he gradually became unmanageable. On a night about a year after these troubles began, I came homely and grimaced the moment I entered the bathroom. Ugh, what is this smell? A greenish, really unpleasant smell was drifting through the bathroom. Looking at the bathtub, there seemed to be some white liquid floating as well. Unfortunately, this wasn't the first time I had encountered such a disagreeable situation. On days when I come homely and try to take a bath, it often ends up like this. The cause of the smell is undoubtedly my husband. Honestly, I didn't even want to think about what he might be doing in the bathroom. I could still bear it, but I wondered how our high school's daughter felt. Speaking of which, I just remembered passing by her a moment ago. She was unnaturally hunched over, sneaking back into her room as if hiding. That child seemed to have a bigger stomach. At that moment, I was struck by a terrible chill. Is Ruby's stomach getting bigger? Why? Since when? I haven't heard about her having a boyfriend. She would have told me if she had one. Could it be that Ruby is now carrying a burden she can't even tell me about? Suffering alone as her belly continues to grow? My cowardly husband took advantage of my absence to mistreat our quiet daughter to relieve his stress. Despite my better judgment, my mind kept imagining awful things. The pitiful sight of my daughter, surely unwilling, unable to raise her voice while being overpowered by her father. I quickly shook my head. I desperately hoped such a horrifying thing wasn't true. But then, what was the cause of Ruby's visibly enlarged stomach? I was afraid to find out. Several months later, Ruby unusually complained of feeling unwell. Our daughter is quiet by nature, but she's physically robust. Since she was little, she rarely fell ill. I feel kind of feverish. It seems so. Hey, Ruby, about this belly. As I gently touched her stomach, Ruby turned pale and looked away. Her reaction was definitely strange. And above all, her symptoms now. They closely resembled the symptoms I had when I was first pregnant with her. Hey, Ruby, please tell me honestly, who is the father? It's... Mom, She couldn't form any more words. Collapsing on the spot, she burst into tears. I chose not to press further and took her to a nearby obstetrician and gynecologist clinic. Even while we were in the waiting room, I tried to find out the name of the father. But it was no use. Ruby simply refused to answer. She kept her lips tightly sealed and just shook her head. The doctor who examined her was named Steve. During the ultrasound examination, he said, "You're pregnant." So it was true. I wonder who the father of the child in Ruby's stomach is. The memory of the smell and the white liquid in the bathtub vividly returned to my mind. Could it be that? When I voiced my dreadful suspicion, Dr. Steve chuckled lightly.
Don't worry, sperms can't survive in a bath. They're sensitive to heat. It's impossible. Can someone get pregnant just by sharing the same bath?
That might be true, but... Just then, as Dr. Steve looked directly at Ruby's face, he widened his eyes in surprise. It looked like he just realized it for the first time. He turned pale. Ruby also seemed surprised when she saw Dr. Steve face to face. I intuitively felt these two knew each other. I questioned them sternly right there. The father is... I think it was this man. Ruby said such an unbelievable thing. Dr. Steve turned even paler. The nurses nearby were also shocked. Dr. Steve's breathing became more erratic. Sweat poured down his face. Perhaps realizing there was no escape, he slumped down.
I'm so sorry. I made a silly mistake. I'm truly sorry.
I was stunned. Couldn't believe that the father of my daughter's child was the obstetrician. Then Dr. Steve revealed something even more unbelievable. He said that the person who introduced Ruby to him was none other than my own husband.
We just happened to sit next to each other at a bar. He said $500 would be enough to introduce a young girl. Of course, I never thought it would be his daughter.
You're the lowest. Both you and my husband are the lowest. I will report this to the police. Dr. Steve fell to the ground and started crying. After that, Ruby told me everything. It seems she accidentally spilled some of my husband's precious liquor while I was away. Then my husband exploded, claiming it was liquor worth $5,000. It must be a lie. There's no way he would drink such expensive liquor at home. But that was enough to deceive Ruby, who knew nothing. My husband had demanded she pay him back. So he told you, if you can't pay with money, you should earn it with your body? Yes, he said he would contact me again once he found a client. It was unbelievable. Selling his own daughter and my husband's actions were the lowest of the low. Dr. Steve's actions involving a minor were against the law. As we were leaving the clinic, I declared that I would formally accuse him. Dr. Steve fully accepted his fate, intending to face his punishment without running away. Now for that good-for-nothing, I had to confront him before reporting him. I returned home with my pregnant daughter, feeling a strong anger welling up even as I tried to suppress it. When my daughter and I arrived home, my husband was lying on the living room sofa. He was lazily drinking again. He's all puffed up and unattractive. His face was just hanging there. The more I looked at him, the angrier I got. I kicked the back of the sofa and yelled at him. You scumbag! What do you think of your own daughter? My husband sprang up as if jolted. He looked at me dumbfounded, his face unshaven and sloppy. It seemed he guessed everything from Ruby's downcast expression. He turned pale. I heard it from Dr. Steve. You sold Ruby, didn't you?
No, I was just making Ruby take responsibility.
Ruby spilled liquor worth $5,000? Where is such liquor? Show it to me. I was as angry as I've ever been in my life, but at the same time I felt an unbearable chill. It seems when people get too angry, they come full circle to calmness. For a moment, I decided to let Ruby go down to her room. I didn't want her to see the questioning that was about to start with her father. After Ruby left the living room, I made my husband sit on the floor. I switched my smartphone camera to video recording mode, not forgetting to capture the evidence. Confess everything. What you did using your daughter.
I'm sorry. I really needed the money.
So you sold our daughter. Do you even realize how terrible what you've done is? Imagine how Ruby felt being sold, deceived and taken advantage of by a man she didn't care for, and to end up with an unwanted pregnancy, unable to tell anyone. When I think about how much pain she must have been in, I start to cry.
I swear I will never do anything like this again. I swear.
Of course you shouldn't. How could you even think of doing it a second or third time? If it were possible, I would have wanted my husband to go through the same ordeal as our daughter. I would want him to experience the same level of pain, sadness, and suffering. But that's hardly possible. Then, punishment is the only option. I told that doctor, Dr. Steve too, that you'd be facing legal judgment.
What? Legal judgment?
Of course. When you do something wrong, you should be judged. You've violated the laws against prostitution, child welfare. Just so you know, the penalties are quite severe. My husband trembled with fear. What I said was not a threat. The penalty for violating the anti-prostitution law is imprisoned for up to 3 years or a fine of up to $1,000. The penalty for violating the Child Welfare Act is imprisonment for up to 10 years or a fine of up to $20,000. If it becomes known that he sold his daughter, the media will surely make a fuss. My husband's name will be all over the national news. Now confess everything quickly. What did you do with the money you got from selling our daughter?
That is, well, you see,
Why can't you say it? Just say it clearly. Gambling, right? You enjoyed gambling with the money you got from selling our daughter. Isn't that right?
How did you know about that?
My husband was shocked, but nothing was surprising. I had expected as much, and I had some evidence. A friend of mine had followed my husband and taken photos as evidence. I stopped the recording on my phone for a moment and showed him a few photos of him gambling away.
What? How come these photos exist? When were these taken?
You didn't notice, did you? A friend of mine followed you and took these photos. She's always worried about me and Ruby. She says it's sad that my husband is such a good-for-nothing.
No, this is different. I only go gambling occasionally.
Don't lie to me. What do you mean occasionally? You mean every week, don't you? I knew my husband was under a lot of stress from work. He was so mentally stressed that he even developed alopecia. However, using alcohol and gambling to vent was a big mistake. Moreover, using the money obtained from selling our daughter for fun is utterly reprehensible. I will be discussing this matter in detail with your father and mother as well.
No, please wait, don't do that.
Both of his parents are elderly and currently reside in a nursing care facility. I had visited them before, and they seemed to be quite frail. If they learn in detail about what my husband has done, the shock might be too much for them. The moment they learn their beloved granddaughter was harmed, it might literally cause them a stroke. Perhaps fearing such a situation, my husband desperately tried to dissuade me.
Please, I'll do anything, just don't tell my father and mother.
Do you think you're in any position to make such an audacious request? Do you still not understand how angry I am?
No, I understand. I get it.
My husband was on the floor, shrinking in size. I had no intention of easing my pursuit. I had had enough of this man and was disgusted by him. Now was as good a time as any to say that. Hey, is there anything else you're hiding from me?
What? No, what do you mean? I'm not hiding anything.
Are you still lying? You've been cheating, haven't you? Didn't I tell you my friend has been following you and gathering all sorts of information? Have you forgotten that?
What? She investigated that too?
I have been saving the information for when I would eventually divorce him. My husband was having an affair. The other party is also married, apparently the wife of an executive at a business partner. As I read out the name and details I had noted down about the other woman, my husband started to tremble. It was to be expected. The partner of his affair is known to be quite a fearsome person in their industry. She seems to be quite a well-known figure in the industry, someone with connections that shouldn't be made public and who is even on the police's radar, right? And you went after her?
No, it's not like that. I didn't initiate it. She approached me, and one thing just led to another.
Can you stop playing the victim? Even after you knew who she was, you kept going to meet her repeatedly, didn't you? And you even took money from her, didn't you? My husband seemed unable to reply. His affair partner was quite wealthy. Moreover, her husband often travels abroad. My husband was summoned during those times and continued the affair. Out in the world, he becomes timid and can't say no to anyone. That's his bad habit. That must have been fully exploited. For me, it doesn't matter who initiated the affair. I know where she lives too, you know. I'm planning to send a certified letter and demand compensation for damages. I'll try asking for $13,000 as a start. Considering the amount, her husband will notice it, I'm sure.
Stop. If her husband finds out, my life will be ruined.
Stop being so spoiled. Because of you, Ruby's life has already been ruined a long time ago. You're prepared to take responsibility, aren't you?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
If he's going to apologize, it should be in front of Ruby. Ruby, still a high school student, was forced into an unwanted pregnancy. She's quiet, but she's certainly hurt inside. It's a scar for life. No matter what my husband does, that scar won't disappear. Afterward, I called Ruby to the living room and made my husband apologize to her on his knees. Now for the final touch. I need to get him to sign the divorce papers I had prepared. When I spread out the divorce form on the table, my husband vehemently shook his head, begging not to divorce.
Please, I'll do anything, just not a divorce. If you abandon me, how am I supposed to live from now on? I even have debts.
You finally said it. You have gambling debts, right? How much in total?
About $10,000.
I could see Ruby was shocked. A debt amount that could shock even a child. It's appalling that he accrued it through gambling. Naturally, I had no intention of continuing a marital relationship with such a good-for-nothing. No matter what you say, I will definitely divorce you. Oh yes, I'll also be claiming compensation for your affair.
Compensation?
Of course. Let's see. How about $30,000? That's an incredibly high amount by any standard, but saying it doesn't cost anything. I decided to push it. My husband, unaware of my true intentions, just kept turning paler. How about it? Wouldn't you like it reduced a little? If you sign the divorce papers willingly, I might reduce the fee. You should be grateful, right?
Reduce the fee? That is indeed very gracious.
I think my husband is not in a state to make rational decisions anymore. Following my command, he signed his section of the divorce form. All that's left is to submit it. Lastly, I ordered my husband to pack his necessary belongings and leave the apartment immediately.
What? And you're telling me to leave? But where would I go?
I don't care where you go. I just don't want to see your face anymore. Ruby feels the same, doesn't she? She probably thinks her father should just go somewhere else, right? Of course. Dad, just so you know, I will never forget what you made me do and what happened to my body. I will hate you for the rest of my life, understand?
I'm sorry. Ruby, really, your dad was foolish. I apologize.
In the end, my husband was sobbing. A husband abandoned by his wife and child. Utterly miserable and pathetic. That night, he packed his bags and left the apartment. The remaining belongings would be sent to him once he found a place to live. He would undoubtedly lead a miserable life from now on. It was clear to see. Later, his misdeeds became known to everyone at his company. It seems it was because I had informed HR and the change in his residential and family status. People asked him in detail, and eventually he couldn't keep it hidden and spilled everything. The cause of the divorce being that he sold our daughter. His actions had caused a stir within the company. His colleagues started looking at him with disdain, and he was subjected to harsh words, being called inhumane. No matter what terrible things they said, my ex-husband had no right to argue. What he did was the lowest of the low, and there was no room for excuse. It might have been better if the damage had been contained within the company. The bad rumors about my ex-husband spread to our clients, and many were displeased. His company dealt with human resources, and having a man who sold his daughter was nothing but toxic. Business plummeted, and the company's earnings significantly suffered. The cause was obvious. As a result of an executive meeting, my ex-husband was dismissed for misconduct and faced claims for damages. The reason I know all this in detail is that my ex-husband came to tell me himself. He wanted to inform me of how desperate his situation was, probably hoping for sympathy. To be honest, it was nothing short of foolish. It also proved that he didn't understand the anger of me and our daughter. No matter how pitifully he acted, neither I nor our daughter were willing to accept him.
I really am sorry, as you can see, so please let me live with you.
So you mean to say you want to rely on me for living expenses, right? You plan to use my earnings to pay off your debts, don't you? Am I wrong?
But if I don't, I'll be stuck in a debt repayment life forever.
How spoiled can you get? A parasite through and through, aren't you? Pay off the debt you accrued yourself. It's your own fault, right? Ruby didn't even come out of her room. She definitely didn't want to see her father's face. Honestly, I felt the same way. There are hardly any good memories of life with him. Whatever little there was had been completely overshadowed by unpleasant memories. Every time we remember him in the future, both my daughter and I will feel pain. He needs to take responsibility for this situation and live far away for the rest of his life. Let me say this again. Neither Ruby nor I want to see your face ever again. Do you understand why?
That's because I've been horrible to both of you?
Exactly. If you understand, then promise me, never appear in front of us again. If you come near again, I'll file for a restraining order with the court, understand? My ex-husband seemed to want to say something else, but he must have realized it was futile. He slowly turned away and walked away. He was heading towards a bleak future of debt hell. No one would help him. The more pitiful and lonely his figure seemed as he walked away, the more a sense of relief washed over me. After that, Dr. Steve was suspended from practicing medicine for 2 years and his clinic was closed. As for my ex-husband, burdened with debts and blamed by many, I don't know the specifics. There are only rumors that he lost everything and is scraping by with part-time jobs. We decided to let the life growing inside Ruby return to heaven this time. It was truly regrettable and heartbreaking, but there was no helping it. Neither Ruby nor I were ready to welcome a new life. I wonder how these events have changed her. Ruby seems stronger. The fact that she continues to attend the same high school even after being discharged is proof of her resilience. I had thought she would want to transfer schools because of the embarrassment and pain. It's strange, but I don't feel that embarrassed. I also have a feeling that I don't want to run away from what I did. I think I want to become stronger by the time I can welcome that child again one day. Ruby. Yes, I understand. I will support you with all my might. The one who suffered the most from this ordeal was Ruby. I can't help but feel uplifted by her positivity, making it impossible for me to be negative. While protecting my beloved daughter, I vow to become stronger than ever before. And having endured such hardships, both my daughter and I will find even greater happiness. I truly believe this from the bottom of my heart.
Hey everyone, I've got something to tell you today. I hate to bring it up during a happy moment, but please pay attention.
It was the birthday of my father-in-law, and 15 family members had gathered. But it was then that my husband Brian stood up with a serious expression on his face. When everyone stopped talking, they all started looking at Brian. The family members were all murmuring to each other, curious about what would happen next. Seeing this, Brian began to speak slowly.
So, I just learned that Rebecca, my wife, has a $100,000 debt. She got herself into this mess without telling me. And the crazy part is, it's all because of some financial disaster at the company she works for.
Even though Brian told the family, they didn't react quickly and stayed quiet. This was because they knew I'm good at managing money and that I was a diligent worker. So the idea of me having a $100,000 debt was like impossible to them. Brian was annoyed by how slow his family was reacting, so he took out a paper from his pocket and showed it to them.
Everyone, what I'm saying is true. Here's the proof. Look, here's a paper that says she owes $100,000.
Yes, that paper he showed had my name on it. It looked pretty basic, like something you could make on a computer, but Brian was so pleased with himself. As if basking in victory, he then cast a cold glance and harsh words towards me alone.
Actually, I've been enduring this for a while, Rebecca. As my wife, you haven't fulfilled your duties. Despite my efforts to earn money, you as my wife do not support me, who's your husband. On top of that, a debt of $100,000. I've had enough. I'll take care of the debt, so you just pay what you can right now.
The relatives started to believe Brian more because of that paper he showed and how he acted, and soon everyone was talking about it. However, I alone remained calm, observing Brian's behavior. That's because I had seen through his lies. He was doing this outrageous thing just to steal money from me. Moreover, it's something that would easily be uncovered if investigated. How stupid can he be? Stop lying about me having a $100,000 debt. Seriously. Do you think I don't know anything? With that thought in my heart, I turned to face Brian again.
What are you so relaxed about? Just admit your guilt. I'm even considering the divorce, you know?
As if threatening me with a card of divorce, Brian blurted out. Yet I remained composed, which only made his tone grow stronger. The more serious he sounded, the more determined I felt. If he was going to trap people with lies, it seemed I had no choice but to corner him thoroughly. I had prepared for this moment. I took a deep breath and glared at Brian. He looked at me slowly to see how I reacted to his lies. I felt sick looking at Brian's annoying smirk. Today I was determined to send this man to hell. You say I haven't fulfilled my duties as a wife? Well then, I'd like to hear about you. What about you? Caught off guard by my unexpected rebuttal, Brian was clearly flustered. Before he could argue back, I pressed on. I work full-time just like you. I do the cleaning and laundry before going to work, and no matter how tired I am, I prepare dinner for both of us after coming back home. Even on weekends, I wake up as usual and take care of the household chores. What about you? Have you ever done even a bit of housework? Brian was trying to reply, but all he could do was open and close his mouth like a fish. Couldn't say anything back. Brian didn't do any housework. It's not the time when only wives are expected to handle household chores. He insisted that housework is a woman's job and didn't lift a finger. Both of us work, so Brian should do his part at home too. The relatives were starting to look at Brian with disapproval. I decided to expose Brian's usual behavior to the relatives. Oh, you come home late, so you can't do housework, right? But your late returns aren't because of work, are they? Weren't you just out drinking? Even on days off, you could at least make up for it, but you either sleep until the afternoon or just go out. You don't do any housework at all. I'm usually the quiet one, but when I argued back, it caught Brian off guard and, amusingly, flustered him. I had never been strong in my words towards Brian before. We never fought as husband and wife, but it wasn't because our relationship was great. I was just tolerating it all. Brian thinks he's all that and hates being told he's wrong. I'm just expressing my opinion, but Brian seems to think he's being denied. If you disagree with him even a little, he totally loses it. I figured this out pretty quick after we tied the knot, so now I just keep quiet and deal with it. Brian, confused and searching for words, finally managed to reply.
What? What do you mean? Men have work-related commitments. I can't just leave on time like you, a woman. You don't understand.
Brian's excuse sounded like he was busy and couldn't do housework. That was the last straw for me. I have commitments too. Gender shouldn't matter. I decline invitations from colleagues and manage my time to balance work and home because of the household responsibilities. I work full-time just like you, yet I manage the household without neglecting my duties. You just laze around and drink after work. Moreover, you're jealous of my higher income and constantly complain about your lower salary. If your salary is low, you should get a qualification or study to make an effort. but you're just playing around. With that attitude, your salary will never increase. I made Brian speechless with my bold attitude. His face turned bright red, flustered because I had hit the nail on the head. I had only stated the facts, yet Brian, proud and competitive, retorted in desperation.
Shut up. How dare you, a woman, act all high and mighty. Don't talk back to a man like me. No matter what you say, your debt won't disappear. You have a debt of $100,000. I will not forgive you for having this debt.
Brian realized he was in a tough spot, so he brought up the debt again. He must think it's his winning card. But the debt was nothing more than Brian's made-up lie. Here's the evidence. As I was thinking about where to start breaking down his story, a voice from the relatives called out. They had been watching our argument and seemed to think it was just a marital spat.
Come on, just talk it out between the two of you.
They tried to calm us down. But this is not just a simple marital quarrel. I'm exposing the true nature of a husband who betrays his wife and tries to trap her. I want my relatives to see where I'm coming from. I'm going to bring out my ace in the hole to deal with my husband's running away and making excuses. You're hiding something too, aren't you? My remark made Brian start to panic in an amusing way. He seemed intent on maintaining his silence, but his eyes were clearly swimming from side to side. It looked like he was planning to get through this without saying anything, so I decided to explain. You're having an affair, aren't you? The places you go to after work aren't for business networking. It's a nightclub, right? You've been smitten with one of the workers there, showering her with quite a bit of money to win her over. And now you two are involved. I said all this in one breath and paused for a moment to watch his reaction. Brian's face turned bright red and he clenched his fists. It was clear he was flustered by being told the truth, but he still wasn't ready to admit it openly. He's too stubborn.
What? Me at a nightclub? You're just making that up out of desperation.
He was desperately trying to talk his way out of it, but sweat was beginning to bead on his forehead. Just one more push. I made that up? I have evidence, you know. Seeing my confident demeanor, Brian gritted his teeth in frustration.
It's because of work. Going to a nightclub is something that happens with work. That's all. There's no showering anyone with money or having a relationship. It must be some misunderstanding.
He was desperately trying to talk his way out with exaggerated words. However, the atmosphere changed drastically when I mentioned the word affair. The relatives started to look at Brian with suspicion, whispering among themselves. Especially the ladies were definitely giving him the evil eye. Even my in-laws, who had been quietly watching the events unfold, couldn't stay silent any longer after hearing that their son was having an affair. They looked at Brian with stern eyes.
Brian, is that true? Are you having an affair? Be honest and answer our questions.
They questioned him in a very stern tone.
I'm not having an affair. Rebecca is just lying to cover up her debt. She's just trying to trap me by lying that I'm having an affair. Please believe me, Dad, Mom.
My in-laws looked back and forth between me and Ryan, their faces filled with confusion. Unlike my lying husband, my in-laws are very sensible people, but they probably also want to believe their own son. They couldn't decide whether what I said was true. As for Brian, he decided to get out of this tight spot by denying everything and getting angry. He doesn't seem to be planning to change his stance of claiming that I am lying. Frowning, he glared at me. Arguing here any further seems pointless. This has gotten a bit long. There's no point in arguing without any evidence. How about this? Let's set another day to talk. I'll bring evidence next time. Brian looked relieved when I suggested it. He probably thought he got away with it for now. My husband is so clueless.
That's fine, but are you sure? You've made a big show of having evidence. You'll regret this.
The face that was bright red a moment ago and sweaty is now relieved, thinking he had escaped. He smirked and relaxed. He might as well make the most of this quick break. The one who'll regret it is not me, but him. Later, the relatives gathered again at my in-laws' house. I arrived on time and ended up welcoming my late-arriving husband. He entered the living room with a young woman. The smell of cheap perfume filled the air. The woman was much younger than my husband, probably just in her 20s. With narrow eyes and thin lips, her plain face was heavily made up. Her eyes, framed by thick eyelash extensions, fluttered as she looked up at my husband. Brian also stretched his nose, placing his hand on the buttocks of the woman wearing a tight miniskirt. Clearly, she was not the kind of woman one would bring to my in-laws' house, but Brian didn't seem to care. Without a word of apology for being late, he introduced her to the relatives.
This is Lisa.
Nice to meet you. Lisa greeted with a sugary, immature tone. Her casual greeting, completely ignoring the atmosphere, irritated the relatives.
Lisa, you have something you want to say, right?
Brian prompted Lisa. Yeah, my dad was deceived by this woman, and he suffered a big loss. While saying this, Lisa pointed her red manicured finger at me. Her explanation was insufficient, and it seemed that my relatives didn't understand anything. They waited for more explanation, but Lisa just smiled happily.
Lisa's father runs a company. He was advised to invest by Rebecca, who works at a securities company, but it seems he suffered a big loss. It was a very risky investment, and it seems there was not enough explanation. Lisa's father demanded compensation for the damages, and Rebecca paid it back, but only a small part was repaid. A significant amount remains as a debt.
Taking over from the unconvincing Lisa, Brian explained with a smirk. He was clearly delighted to put me in a tight spot. Furthermore, today he was very confident, bringing Lisa as a supposed witness. Brian sat heavily on the living room sofa, crossing his legs. Next to him, Lisa was leaning on him as if depending on him. Brian must think Lisa depends on him, but he's totally mistaken. So you better pay back the money you borrowed from my dad quickly. Lisa glared at me, opening her narrow eyes as wide as she could. She thinks she's threatening me, but her young and simple face doesn't intimidate me at all. I almost laughed, half in amusement and half in disgust. Lisa looks and acts pretty immature, not just in her appearance. Did she really think she could pull a fast one on me with that fake story? If they are going to come at me with lies, I will meet them with the truth. The doorbell rang at just the right time. I headed to the entrance to welcome the elderly man who had arrived. I escorted the man to the living room. Upon seeing the man, Lisa's expression changed drastically. She gasped, uncrossed her legs, and straightened her posture. Dad, why are you here? As Lisa spoke, the color drained from her face and her body trembled visibly. Just by looking at Lisa's drastic change, it was clear that she had been lying. Oh, Lisa, you look pale. Are you all right? Is something troubling you? I paused for effect before addressing the relatives. Everyone, this Lisa here is a worker at a nightclub. The relatives began to whisper among themselves, saying things like, I knew it, and
I thought her makeup was heavy.
The woman shot piercing looks of disgust at Lisa. Lisa is actually Brian's mistress. Having said this, I looked at my husband. He did not seem intent on hiding his relationship with Lisa as he maintained a confident smile. However, this was just the introduction. The real show was about to begin. I was about to reveal secrets about Lisa that even my husband didn't know. Lisa has not only been involved with Brian, she has also been frequently visiting bars. It seems she was quite smitten with a bartender and has been financially supporting him generously. Soon she ran out of money and began to be in debt. She borrowed a tiny sum and now it's turned into a huge debt because she took money from some dodgy sources. My words seemed to be news to my husband as he looked at Lisa in shock. He should take his time to savor the shock of being betrayed by someone he trusted. Lisa decided to deceive Brian. She fabricated a story that I had advised her father to make an investment that resulted in a loss and that she was burdened with debt because of it. My husband's face grew even paler as he finally realized he had been deceived. He looked at Lisa with a questioning gaze, but Lisa turned away, ignoring him. But there's more to the story, and here comes the climax. Brian, who exactly have you been talking about having debts all this time? The $100,000 debt is Lisa's, not mine. With this final statement, my husband's face went white, and he slumped, as if his soul had left his body. His eyes wandered aimlessly. I then spread out the evidence I had obtained from a detective agency on the table. Photos of Lisa flirting with a bartender, a photo of her handing over an expensive watch as a gift, photos of her entering a consumer finance office to take out a loan, and the note of Lisa's debt. All the evidence supported my story. My husband was speechless from the shock. Next to him, Lisa turned pale and her eyes darted back and forth. She was probably trying to come up with an excuse, but it would be impossible with all the evidence laid out.
Lisa, what on earth are you doing?
A thunderous shout filled the air. It was Lisa's father. Lisa's father, this big, tough guy, had this scary expression that made me nervous, even though he wasn't mad at me. Lisa got all tiny when he yelled at her.
I allowed you to go to the city in the hopes of it being a valuable social study, but it turned out to be a mistake. I didn't know you were working at a nightclub. And on top of that, you started visiting bars and got in debt. Come back home immediately.
Her father's imposing presence nearly felt like he could strike her at any moment, and Lisa began to cry. Lisa's father runs a company and is also a client of mine at the securities company. The only truth in Lisa's story was this part, but everything else was a lie. I had advised Lisa's father on sound investments, actually generating profit and earning his trust. Thus, the story Lisa told about the debt was completely false. Lisa tried to deceive me and take my money. It was nothing but a childish and despicable tactic. Her father, previously looking furious, now seemed deflated, disappointed by his daughter's foolish actions. I heard that Lisa was an only daughter. She was a cherished child born in her parents' later years. But perhaps being too precious led to overprotection, and she grew up without proper social understanding, as her father sadly observed. He turned to me, his expression solemn, and apologized.
Rebecca, I am terribly sorry for what happened. My daughter has caused you trouble. This is all due to my lack of supervision as a parent.
I quickly stopped him, who was almost ready to get on his knees to apologize to me. Please stop apologizing, sir. Your daughter is an adult. She must take responsibility for her own actions. Hearing this, the father nodded deeply. He is not only an excellent businessman, but also a man of character. How could such a respectable father have raised a daughter like Lisa? He made Lisa stand in front of me and apologize.
As you see, I'm sorry. Now, Lisa, apologize properly.
Half forced by her father, Lisa apologized. Her expression was sullen, like a child scolded for mischief, hardly seeming like a heartfelt apology. I'm sorry. Her voice was barely audible. You will be held responsible for this. Trying to deceive me and your father is no minor offense. You will be hearing from my lawyer soon, so be prepared. At the mention of a lawyer, Lisa flinched. She maybe didn't think it was a big deal to trick me, but that's not okay. As a working adult, she should naturally bear responsibility.
I'm truly sorry. Once again, I offer my apologies and will also pay for the damages.
After saying this, the father apologized again. Then he took Lisa by the hand and led her out. After the departure of Lisa and her father, a brief silence fell over the living room. My husband got left behind, and now he's looking around not sure what to do. No one here was on his side. My in-laws and other relatives looked at him with suspicion, waiting for his apology. Now that the witness Lisa, whom he thought was his greatest weapon, has vanished and the whole thing has been revealed as a farce, I wonder how he plans to explain himself. I turned towards my husband. Like a frightened puppy, he averted his eyes. He seems to understand that he is in a disadvantageous situation. What are you going to do? It seems everything was a lie, wasn't it? An apology here might have improved the situation a bit. Perhaps the attitudes of my in-laws and other relatives would have changed. However, my husband chose to be defiant.
I had no choice but to do this.
My husband's demeanor became arrogant again. His previously frightened eyes now filled with resolve, and he glared at me. I glared back without backing down. What do you mean you had no choice?
You're too perfect. You earn more than me, and you manage the household too. That leaves no place for me as a husband. I felt suffocated by your perfection. That's why I had an affair, to give myself some breathing room.
Seriously? I was dumbfounded by my husband's selfish excuse, at a loss for words. My in-laws and other relatives watching the situation seemed to feel the same way.
Brian, do you understand what you're saying? That's incredibly selfish. Yes, reflect on what you have done and apologize to Rebecca.
My in-laws confronted my husband, but he remained defiant to the end.
I'm sorry, Rebecca. We never raised him to be like this. I guess we have to think we never had a child. I'm sorry, Rebecca.
My in-laws apologized to me, but I had no intention of blaming them. They had always been sincere towards me. My husband is an adult. He must take responsibility for his actions. I can no longer live with such a husband. I have decided to live on my own. Given what has happened, I can't live with you any longer. I will divorce you and demand compensation.
Divorce? Wait, I can't pay compensation.
My husband panicked, finally realizing the seriousness of the situation. He had been relying on my income, living beyond his means. He had been able to frequent nightclubs and lavish gifts on Lisa because he was dipping into my salary. Moreover, he had no habit of saving, so paying compensation would be difficult. However, I had no intention of showing mercy here. I was the one who was unilaterally hurt by his affair, and I haven't even heard an apology.
My bad. I'll help out with the housework from now on, so please just don't divorce me. My salary alone isn't enough.
Don't joke with me. Helping with housework? Sharing household chores is a natural part of being married. And don't rely on my salary.
All right, I got it. At least spare me the compensation.
Don't be so entitled. You totally betrayed me without even thinking twice. Own up to it. I stood my ground and my husband totally fell apart. Seeing him like that made me feel like a weight had been lifted off my chest. Later, I hired a lawyer and demanded compensation from both my husband and Lisa. Due to the affair and the attempt to defraud me of money, the amount of compensation was significantly higher than usual. Both my husband and Lisa begged for a reduction, but I quickly refused. Moreover, my husband lost his job when his company learned that he had conspired with his mistress to deceive his wife. Now, unemployed, my husband struggles with daily expenses and compensation, and reportedly begged his parents for help. However, my in-laws and other relatives have disowned him, I heard. Now, completely isolated, my husband is scraping by with day-to-day jobs while paying the compensation. Lisa also ended up with debts and compensation to pay, and reportedly returned to her parents for help. But they said no, saying it was her own fault. Under strict parental supervision, she works part-time jobs to pay the compensation. As for me, I finally have some peace. I live a comfortable life without being manipulated by my selfish ex-husband. When I lived with my ex-husband, I had to do household chores immediately after coming home exhausted from work. Now, if I'm tired, I can eat out or go out for drinks with colleagues. My weekends are no longer consumed by cleaning and laundry. It's like I'm back to my single days. Recently, I've been thinking about something. When I was single, my ex-husband was ambitious and serious. He did extra studying about his job outside of work hours. I was attracted to that aspect of him and married him. I probably spoiled him too much, wanting him to concentrate on his job, but it backfired, and he ended up slacking off and not caring about his work anymore. Just like Lisa, who was raised by caring parents but grew up to be a selfish and willful adult. Doing what you think is best for someone doesn't always lead to good results. This lesson is going to help me live a more satisfying life.